Hello and happy Monday, open source besties. My name is Gabby Shires and I'm a DX engineer here at Vercel. And today I am here with Grim, who is a maintainer at Bounty, and I'm super excited. Grim, would you like to say hello?
Hi.
Hi. All right, so where are you tuning in from and what time is it there?
I'm tuning in from Oregon. I woke up at 8. It's 9 a.m.
Oh,
just for you.
yeah. And so thank you so much for waking up early. I'm tuning in from Cleveland, Ohio, and it's about noon or 12:30 for me. So kind of got a late start today, but I'm super excited to be here. And Grim, would you like to introduce yourself and introduce what you are building and introduce yourself to everyone here on the live stream?
Oh boy. Okay. Hi, I'm Grim. For those who don't know, my real name is actually Caleb. I'm building Bounty. On a low level, you can think of it as as Fiverr, just the opposite. I guess that's kind of like it. um,
And yeah, and when you say Fiverr, so for those of you who aren't familiar, Fiverr is a platform where people can post jobs that they want completed, and or people who want to complete jobs can post their profiles and get hired. So, what I really like about Bounty is that it is a platform for developers or people who are building stuff to say like, "Hey, I need help with this project. Can a developer help me build it?" Or for a developer themselves to make a profile and get paid to do a gig. So I love the idea of Bounty. I think that it's a really unique idea, kind of making a Fiverr specifically for developers and the open source community. Is there anything that you'd like to add to that description, Grim?
Yeah, so just in my experience in open source and being a developer, I've noticed tons of slop, as we call it, just throughout the platforms. Early on, I was doing freelancing on Fiverr and stuff, and I realized that since there's so many gigs on there, just spam gigs, AI gigs, just filled with tons of, I guess, nonsense work, it's so hard to actually find real people, to work for it. And obviously, you need money. So that's kind of why I'm building Bouncy, just a better way to connect real people with real, actual good code and make good money from that, right? So,
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting point, and I would like to kind of dig into this pivot that we've discussed that Bounty is making. So, Bounty originally started mostly as this platform that's like a marketplace for people looking for jobs and people who want to post jobs. But recently, you've moved it to be more towards a vetting system, right? As you
yeah,
say, to prevent AI slop. So, can you talk more about what you think AI slop is and how you are going to implement this vetting system for
yeah,
Bounty?
for sure. So before I do that, I actually want to talk about why I started to build Bounty in the first place.
Yeah, of course.
So somebody on Twitter called Ray, he's building a platform called Bloom. Anyway, he posted somebody needs to build a Bounty platform for V0. So the initial idea for it was to actually be based off of V0 and creating, I guess, bounties with V0 first. But obviously, that's kind of, not the best idea. Anyway, to answer your question about, I guess, fixing slop, um, recently I've seen projects like just, I guess, tons of open source projects
Mhm.
like Yelldrop, for example. They're closing off their pull requests because of the increase in vibe coded PRs using, Claude Code, V0, Replit, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm just seeing these hardworking people that are, already spending so much time managing their repos, and I'm like, well, if there's so much vibe coded slop, like surely there has to be a better solution for this. And so I
Yeah.
decided, since I'm already building a tool for the open source community, I might as well add in some sort of vetting process in there just to make it easier on the people that actually deserve, to have all this work done for them. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and so I heard 2 big things from that, right? The first thing is that it seems like V0, a Vercel product that everyone should try out, shameless plug, um,
oh,
inspired Bounty, right?
yeah,
But right, it's kind of a interesting situation where it inspired Bounty, but also it's one of the things that Bounty is working to vet, right? Is these like maybe PRs that are created by people who maybe create these PRs with good intentions, but don't understand the code behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this, but what is your opinion of tools like V0 from Vercel or something like Claude Code, right? That enable people to, code up stuff without really knowing what they're doing, but can contribute to things like this where companies are closing their pull request.
I think they're amazing. I
Mhm.
love Cloud Code. I love V0 because they enable your average engineer or even grandma to do things that they couldn't do yesterday. And I think they're really good when used as an enhancer, but not as like, a replacement for your own brain, right? So for example, my use case, when I'm using Cloud Code, I'm using it as an extra four arms, right? So I'm the problem that these platforms cause if somebody doesn't know what they're doing is, for example, what's happening to these PRs. So these people are opening pull requests from just entirely from Cloud Code, so they have no idea what's actually being written in those PRs. And so when these maintainers are going in and asking them, about their pull request and about what this does, how this fixes it, what the actual problem is, how can we reproduce this, they can't exactly answer those questions, right?
Mhm.
So what Bounty's doing to solve this is it's not necessarily filtering these out entirely, like we're not blocking anything off, but we're adding sort of a vetting or trust process to the entire thing. And because GitHub is obviously open source, so everything is out in the public, you can sort of start to build onto these different profiles and you can start to see, okay, who actually knows how to code and who doesn't. So we're more of flagging with some sort of probability on, how close is this to looking, AI. It's all based off of a rubric pretty much.
Yeah. So I want to call out something that I find interesting here is that you're not saying that any use of AI constitutes AI slop, right?
Right.
Like very talented developers can and should be using AI tooling, right? Like, V0, like Claude Code, like Copilot, things like that. But AI should and always has been intended to be a tool, not a replacement for developers.
For sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and so what you're looking to do is not completely ban anyone who's touching AI, but rather to say, we want developers who know how to use AI responsibly and intelligently, and if they are creating PRs, they can speak to the code that they've written, fix it, and not make breaking changes with no way to roll
Exactly.
it back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, the creator of the Linux kernel himself is vibe coding, Linus Torvalds.
Yeah.
So to if I were to entirely, restrict AI from the platform just as a whole, imagine how much pushback I get from that. That's a really dumb decision. And like in this age of AI and all this growth and stuff, that would be very limiting and not a very smart move at all.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. So, my next question is I feel like open source and
Yes.
artificial intelligence, right, exist as apexes for beginners to get into tech, right?
Right.
So, a lot of people, the first things that they will contribute to in their career are going to be open source repos.
Okay.
And a lot of people who, especially who are non technical, who don't come from a traditional CS background, their first time building a website or building an app, especially in this new modern age of tools like vibe coders, they are going to be using vibe coding tools, perhaps making PRs, pushing code that they don't necessarily understand.
For sure.
Do you, yeah, do you feel like this attitude or movement towards having a vetting system raises the barrier to entry for beginners? And if so, do you think that that's a bad thing?
I think inherently it could be seen as that, but honestly, I think no, because with these tooling, I mean, it's not that hard to, ask the AI, what's happening, but it's less limiting them and more encouraging them to actually know what they're writing and have respect for the people that are actually building the whole community they're trying to actually enter, right?
Yeah.
So imagine it's my first day coding, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I see, oh, $200 Cloud Code Max for infinite usage. Sounds good. Let's do it. And so, I mean, there's this whole narrative around the open source community, like make one pull request, get it merged, land $1 million job. Let's go. But I think where that's flawed is kind of promising people this super easy entry to a really high paying job. And that starts to create, tons of spam. Like, uh, there's this one, I guess, video on YouTube kind of introducing people on, how to use GitHub and stuff. And that's because of that one video. I forget which repository it's on, but there's repos with like a bunch of spam pull requests.
Yeah.
And anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
But um,
Yeah. And so I think we were just talking about barriers to entry and how having a vetting process might be seen as a barrier to entry, but it seems like from your sentiment, it really is just protecting the sanctity of code, right? Making sure that it's not filled with AI slop. And it seems like maybe you even think it could be used as like a teaching tool, right? Where if we have these standards set in place, when you do have new developers, it encourages them to understand their code and to look back at it and understand the changes they're making. Is that correct?
yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're trying to code for the first time, it's easier than it's ever been, So you can just, I guess, use any AI tooling. But the main thing I'm trying to put across here is take the extra 5 seconds to read the code you're actually writing, to ask the AI, hey, what does this do? Or even read some docs, who knows?
Yeah. And do you think that some of the anti-vibe coding, anti-AI sentiment that we see in the tech community comes from this new wave of people creating things, which is beautiful, right? I think creation is beautiful, but not understanding what they've built, pushing this code, and then you have things that are, for lack of a better term, slop that other people have to kind of go behind and fix.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely reason with them. I mean, I can understand where they're coming from. It's honestly comparable to the whole dot-com boom from the 90s. Like, it's a brand new technology. There's people who have no idea what this stuff even does. I mean, there's tons of stories of AI being used for bad. But I think that we're in an era where the choices we make today can, impact the future for good or bad, right? And so why not just accept the AI craze and build better guidelines, better tooling, better ways to utilize all this crazy power and knowledge, right? To go to a better cause. And that cause is the open source community and building better platforms that all these big tech companies are honestly doing very poorly at, and them being owned by the entire community versus one singular person who has control of everything.
Yes, I love that. And you are a huge fan of the open source community,
Yes, yes.
and you seem very protective of it, which I love.
That's my
Um,
baby.
can I ask you, do you think that the epidemic of AI slop disproportionately affects the open source community?
I think yes and no.
Mhm.
Um, when I say yes, it's because obviously there's tons of projects I love and I don't want to see them fail. And
Mhm.
obviously with AI slop and bad PRs, I mean, I guess a good example of this is when NPM got hacked. There's the whole bad PR and that pushed in some, you know, some malicious code. Anyway, I feel like the bad parts of AI are when code is being pushed that nobody understands. And I mean, I guess 10 years from now, imagine everyone's using AI, right?
Yeah.
It can only go bad when AI is 1000% replacing our brains and there's no actual human intervention in the process, right? So,
Yeah.
reading the code, writing it, actually, reading these PRs.
Mhm.
But like I said, I feel like it's great for uh, extending your current power, your current knowledge, your current capabilities.
Yes. And on a more micro scale, right? So just thinking about Bounty, right? You
Right.
are the core maintainer of Bounty, right? You are a one
Mhm.
person team. And when I think of a lot of the open source projects that I know, it is a very grassroots effort with small teams, right? A lot of the
Yeah,
teams have between like 1 and 3 people. And I think that AI slop, right, can disproportionately affect the open source community because if you are a core maintainer or you're a part of a small team, when you are tasked with reviewing all of these PRs and kind of filtering and sifting through like what is good and what is bad, that takes up so much of your valuable bandwidth and time. And then you kind of get stuck in this loop where you want people to contribute to open source,
for sure.
but you cannot build the open source project that you set out to build because you're too busy filtering through things that are potentially spam and can be potentially hazardous to your project. Do you see a lot of that with Bounty of getting PRs that are slop and it affecting your ability to ship?
So thankfully, because Bounty is such a low level project in terms of being out in the world, I haven't experienced too much of that. I mean, I've had like 5 or 6, but I can sympathize with those projects who have experienced that. Like for example, TL Draw, who has been experiencing tons of that.
Mhm.
Um, as a very very small project owner, and it's just me, like you said, I I'm responsible for shipping, marketing, all this crazy stuff that I have to do, and getting a spam vibe coded PRs in my repository only takes up time from myself because I mean I've got a full time job, like I've got things to worry about in my personal life, and so having to review PRs that are not actual made by a person who understands their code, it just takes up my valuable time from shipping valuable updates that can change the platform more. And for example, um, I forget which company it was, but a big reason why these companies are actually turning off their PRs from the the public is because they're getting these pull requests from people who don't understand what they're writing. So if they get asked about it, they have no idea what's actually happening, which just wastes 10 minutes times, I don't know, 1,000 other PRs from those core maintainers.
Mhm. Yeah. And it seems like you are sympathetic, empathetic, right, to the issue of getting these bad PRs, right? If you're a company or you're an open source project, but you don't seem super supportive of turning off PRs, right? And I think that's why you have pivoted into making Bounty a vetting system.
Yeah.
So, can you talk more? And I know we briefly touched on this, but what kinds of things are you looking um, for a contributor to vet them as a worthy contributor, right? Is it like how many pull requests they've had, like the history, the length of, their contributions? Is it a rating system where other people rate their work? Or talk through what that looks like for you.
Sure. So it's honestly less about the volume of stuff they're actually writing. Like for example, it would be unfair of me to base the system on total lines of code produced, or how many followers they have on GitHub, right? Like
Yeah.
that's unfair to new people.
Mhm.
But some things you can look for in these PRs are, as I mentioned earlier, a rubric, but um, that would entail like quality of code, best practices used. I mean, kind of, it's mostly the little things in the PR, like I don't know, random emojis or whatever. But to answer your question, um, the difference in the code from somebody who it's entirely vibe coded and stuff, I mean it's like the comments, it's the spammed, I don't know, use effects or whatever. It's just like these super improper different methods and stuff used in the code that it starts to really uh, raise red flags to maintainers. I mean because they've seen these things 1,000 times before, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I love that it seems like there's balance here, right? Where we are protecting the sanctity, right, of open source, and we're trying
Right.
to, prevent the slop, but it also feels very welcoming still to beginners, right? Like you're not
Yeah.
looking for someone who has like 10,000 GitHub stars. You're not looking for
Right.
someone who has been like pushing code for like 25 years, right? You're just looking for a certain level of like quality and thought going into the code,
Right.
which I,
It's just about passion. It's
yeah,
about
yeah,
actually caring for the projects you're, writing code for.
yeah.
Because I've seen a lot of, I mean, to kind of call back to the whole Fiverr thing.
Mhm.
If you take one scroll through the platform, on engineering posts, I guess,
Mhm.
you sort of see, you recognize these like just AI posts where it's less about making a change and it's more about making money, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the reason why the open source community stands out to me so much is because there's so much passion behind it, right? I
Mhm.
mean, look at Linus Torvalds. Like he created Git and the Linux kernel just out of passion, just because he could, right? It
Yeah,
wasn't to make money. It wasn't to make $1 million, buy a yacht, and then just disappear, right? It's about actually making an impact in the people around him. I mean, and kind of look at Linux now, right? It's a big uh,
yeah,
competitor and actual usable platform compared to these big, closed source things like Windows or whatever, right?
yeah,
Um, so my point in saying that is I'd rather not be restricted by, using one platform, one solution for everything, versus when I can just fork a repo if I want to change something, right?
yeah,
Um, that's why the open source community is just so beautiful, because you can do anything you want,
yeah.
new, old, whatever.
Yeah. And I love that. I think you talked a lot about why you love the open source community, right? About the passion of the contributors, people doing stuff for the love of the game, not
Yeah,
necessarily revenue or profit, which I think that's one of my favorite things about the community as well. And I think you mentioned Linus. I think every single person who knows the term open source like knows Linus, and they're like huge Linux fans. But would you like to talk more about how you specifically got interested in technology and what drew you to open source specifically?
great question. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it started like when I was really young. I mean, I'm talking like middle school on the school Chromebooks. Like I was just, I don't know, I'm not sure if Ripple was there back then,
Mhm.
but I was just writing Hello World websites on my Chromebook, just messing with HTML and CSS, and then that kind of started the whole rabbit hole, I guess. And
Mhm.
from there, I was just like making websites like every single day, just kind of making whatever I want. And then that kind of evolved into making these like, I don't know, flash game websites on, Google sites or whatever. And then eventually, 5 years in Atlanta, whatever, I discovered Vercel, I discovered GitHub, I discovered all this crazy stuff that I had no idea about. And it was just so beautiful, honestly. Like, I can't tell you what my first PR was, but honestly, I think it was a couple years ago when I really started to get into open source. My first major contribution was for a project called Mail Zero, which
Wow.
was kind of an open source mail alternative.
Mhm.
But it was just really cool seeing how I can make such a good contribution to a project, just for free, just because I love the project, the people, whatever. And I made like 5 or 6 PRs to it, and it helped them a lot. And just seeing their response and seeing how much love there is, surrounding the project and the people and just the whole community as a whole, I thought that was really awesome. And that's not something that you can get from a community without people, right? Without love as a foundation for and passion, for the project.
Yeah, I agree. And I am looking at the chat, and someone commented that they think a big problem with AI assisted development is a disconnection between the developer and their code. And people can sometimes feel less responsible for the code that they have written. Whereas I think previously, a lot of times developers have built their personality around the fact that they write code. It's a labor of
Yeah,
love.
yeah,
Um,
for
so I
sure.
Yeah. And so I think that moving forward, right, in this new future where AI is just inevitable, right, and AI, like vibe coding is inevitable, I think that doing things that kind of steer people back in the direction of having accountability and care that goes into your code is good. I
Right.
think that's a very balanced approach to take to things. Beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember even a couple years ago, before this whole AI craze was going on, saying you can code was like the biggest flex ever because nobody knows what coding is, right? And so that's the kind of approach I'm taking with Bounty is like bringing back that pride with knowing how to actually write good usable code versus typing in your terminal, hey, do this in natural language and not actually knowing what's going on. And
Yeah.
so the biggest thing about Bounty that I think is honestly awesome is rewarding those people who actually have that just raw passion and pride for being a developer.
Mhm.
And whether that's sponsoring PRs or just, paying the people that are, I don't know, just donations, contributions, whatever. And so uh, I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So what I'm building at Bouncy is not just a platform to, pay, sell, host, make jobs, whatever.
Mhm.
It's in the future a platform where you can wrap around, I don't know, SDKs, APIs to kind of integrate this contribution model into your own projects, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's really important to keep rewarding these valuable contributions for the end of time, right? So always making sure that these people feel appreciated and loved. Whereas right now, obviously, it's really easy to say, what's the point of learning how to code and actually understanding what I'm writing when I can be replaced by some guy with 15 Claude sessions running at the same time, paying $1,000 a month in tokens, right?
Yeah. And I like that we talk about knowing to code and like putting in labor and effort as part of the developer identity. And that seems like that's a huge part of your identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to know more about Grim as a person. So quickly, can you tell me three things about you? Hobbies, interests, things that maybe you're doing online that we wouldn't know.
Sure. I mean, a big part of my life right now is my family, and
Mm.
also that's part, cats as well. I've got three cats. I've got an amazing girlfriend at home. I mean, I, I do a lot of coding in my like actual free time for my hobby, so that's pretty boring. But
Mhm.
I like sports. I mean, just general things in life.
Yeah.
I like hanging out with my people and spending time. I like food. I like to, I guess, just mess around, have fun, talk to people. Um, I did go to NextConf and Chip AI, and that was super awesome. I got to have food, which was best part, obviously. But I mean, the the biggest part about my life that I think is really impactful for, you know, my passions and projects is just people and community. And
Yeah.
frankly, that's why I love open source so much, is because
Mhm.
I can talk to people and I can meet people.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, and I think that's what it's all about. Open source is a community.
It's about
And
meet along the way.
yeah, community, where can we find Bounty? How can we contribute to it? And where can we find you on social media?
So you could find Bounty at just bounty.new for
Mhm.
a domain. You can contribute bounty.new on GitHub, but dot is spelled out DOT.
Mhm.
And my personal Twitter, you can find me at Grim Codes. I talk about Bounty and open source and just
Mhm.
random stuff on there. I'm super active.
Mhm.
I respond to every single PR, every comment, every reply, whatever.
Yeah, beautiful. And last question, have to ask it. What is your favorite dessert?
This is the most important question.
Yeah, of course.
I like tres leches.
Tres
It's
leches,
amazing.
top tier, very solid.
Delicious.
Beautiful. Well, Grim, it was amazing having you. I loved hearing your perspectives. I think this is so topical. And yeah, I hope that you have an amazing week. And thank you for building
Thank
Bounty.
you. Thank you for letting me yap.
Of course. All right. You have a great day.
You too.
See ya. Bye.